Okay, welcome back to the third episode of Nichathan Gaming, creating the Speed Speller application. So in our last video, we just added our score texts and we added the horizontal bar image. You can add an image just like I showed you in video 1 to make this more interesting, or you can simply give it a plain color like I have. For this, things will look very plain, and you can add the images as you like. We're mostly focusing on making things functional right now. One of the things that I did forget to mention in the first two videos is if you are using your or if you are creating your canvas like this, you have it scale with the screen size like I have, and it doesn't quite look right, you may want to go to your game, click free aspect up here. It's usually default by free aspect, and you'll want to create something like full HD 1920 by 1080 or 1080 by 1920. You can create a custom one by clicking here, give it a name, a width, and a height. So I notice that I don't have a 1080 by 1920, which would be the mobile. So I'll name this mobile 1080 by 1920. And then of course I need to set a fixed resolution of 1080 by 1920. And look, now this is how my user interface would look like on a mobile screen. And this is how it looks like on a normal computer screen. Okay. So that aside, we're now missing one major part, which is our text field. So again, let's go to our canvas, right click, UI, and then just look down until you see input field. Now, if you notice, these things like text, button, drop down, and input field have a thing called Text Mesh Pro, and I have used it once, I believe, but I didn't really notice much of a difference between text. But I believe the Text Mesh Pro is in case you want to add something very special. Of course, Unity is well documented, and you can find lots of important information about everything from the Unity website or even learn.unity.com. Okay, now we have our text field. If we look at the text field, it's a little small, especially compared to everything else. So let's double it. So instead of 160 width, we'll set it to 320 width and a height of 60. Then I want to move it down so it's below the black line and out of the way. So as always, I moved it down. 442 seems about good. So let's see what negative 450 looks like. Great. So now we have a nice proper number. Okay, now let's try to change some of the values. We'll add an on value changed later once we get into our scripting. Let's change the name of our input field, of course. So this would be our player, let's call it the player spelling input field. Now, as for the placeholder, let's see, you could have a placeholder here, but I find that the placeholder just kind of gets in the way. So you could either delete it by pressing the delete key, or you can just go here and turn it off so it's easy to get the placeholder again if you want. For now, let's actually leave it on so we can see what the text will look like. So, of course, I want the font style to be bold. It's just easier to see bold. Left and vertically aligned, vertically centered, I should say. And of course, the max size of the text will be from 10 to 300. And for the color, we can set it as a solid black. Or you can set it as any other color that you want, of course. And let me turn off my placeholder again. that just shows you what it will look like. Now we just need a few more things. We need a play button, a difficulty button, and a level test button. So to keep organizing these things, let's see, I'm going to have an empty object for the game control area is what I will call this empty object. And as always, I want it to fit, so I'll set everything to 0 while it's in stretch mode. Then I will right click again, I will add a UI, and let's add a button this time. This button will be called the play button, and let's duplicate it, and we'll call this one the reset button. Now for these buttons, look, they have an image, so you can add an image if you want to. Actually, let's do that. Okay, so I just quickly made 2 buttons. I'm of course no artist, I'm a coder, but let's export these. Let's move them over to my desktop real fast. I'll call this one the reset, and let's make the next one, which, as you guessed it, would be the play button. At least I hoped you would guess that it's the play button. So we'll save that in the same location. Let's hide the Photoshop and go back to our speed speller in the Unity. And now I'm just going to drag these 2 images over. But first, as everything else in Unity, you should keep your assets clean. So I will create a folder which I will call icons. Now for Unity, there's actually something very special with things that you can use in code like images. And that is if you create a special folder spelled exactly as resources with a capital R. If you do not spell it exactly, it will not work. So I'm going to move my icon folder to my resources, and then I'm going to drag my play and reset images into there. I will of course make sure that they're sprite, 2D, and UI, and everything looks fine. Now let's go to my play button. For my play button, instead of using this UI sprite that we see here, I am going to use my play button image. Now we don't need text on it anymore, so I'm going to delete the text, and I'm going to do the same thing with my reset button. So delete the text and add the reset image. And as you see, they are both a little squished. And actually, if you look at my Photoshop, I made these in 32 by 32 pixels. So perfect icon size. But instead of having it 32 by 32, I think I'm going to have it at, let's say 200 by 200. Seems to be a good size. They're a little blurry, but again, I'm no artist. And we will set their onClick event, but we will not set an object for them yet. Okay, that's the end of our buttons, and we are getting pretty long in this video here too. So in our next one, we'll set a difficulty level, and we may even start coding for the first time then too. So one last thing is, let's turn off our reset button. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.